The aftermarket for Transformers is a really weird place. In the past few months or so, I've made quite a lot of purchases on the aftermarket, and some people put stuff up on here for ridiculous prices. So that just makes it all the more satisfying when you find something for a decent price that you've been looking for a while. I mean, since getting my hands on Legacy Gears, I went back to an old goal of getting all the Generations mini-bots, and started prowling for a Kingdom Huffer again. Since I'd gotten one before, but he was pre-owned and had missing parts and QC issues, so I ended up returning it. And for the life of me, I just could not find one, until on a random Thursday after work, I boot up the old eBay and see a Kingdom Huffer and all of his repaints for the price of a leader. Like, good god, that is a steal. So, since I haven't done a video with an army of repaints for a while, let's have a look at Kingdom Huffer and Pipes and Golden Disc Collection Chapter 1 Road Ranger and Puffer, which is definitely an interesting choice of mold to get the Seeker repaint treatment. So, starting with the root of them all, Kingdom Huffer is a pretty reasonable deluxe, with some really nice sculpt work. All the details are really rich and striking, with extremely intricate mechanical detail on the torso and thighs. I love the stripe pattern we see below the outer armor. It definitely gives him that laborer look. The rest of the detailing on the lower legs, backpack and arms is either far sparser or far less heavy, which helps balance out how heavy the details on his overalls are. And the head is great, but it's not the most accurate head we've seen lately. It does the job, but there's a couple of details around the eye and the chin that are just off for Huffer. In fact, this figure isn't the most accurate to the cartoon in a lot of ways. The general layout of the features is still there, but the proportions and sculpting are not even close. And frankly, thank f*** for that. This mold seems to take its proportions from the cartoon model for Pipes more so than Huffer, and that leaves him far broader and much less awful to look at. Like, yeah, I know that it's G1 and it's a classic design at all, but who okayed this design to be marketed to kids? This thing looks like it's not allowed near kids. While I'm sure there are some people out there who want a 100% cartoon accurate Huffer for mainline, I'm not one of them, and I'm plenty happy with the one we have here. And I think a huge part of how satisfied I am with this figure is the choice of colour. The pastel purple and bright orange instantly let you know who this is, and the silver paint on the arms is gorgeous, and the paintwork and plastic choices really help tie this mold back to the character nicely. As for accessories, Huffer comes with a pretty nice looking gun. I'm not sure if it's based on anything, but it looks cool. And this fucking awesome shield. I love the ridges on top, and both accessories are painted really nicely with gunmetal across the board and some silver on the shield too. But unfortunately, my Huffer can't hold the gun. Nor could my old one actually. Is this a widespread issue? If so, leave it in the comments, because if it is, then that'd be quite poor. Although, due to the nature of the character, I don't tend to display or pose him with his weapons anyway. And if anything, the gun makes a halfway decent arm cannon. Speaking of the posing, it's alright on this guy. His head is ball jointed, but a little on the limited side. His shoulders are a little loose going out, but have a decent range, and they go all the way around pretty nicely. He has bicep swivels, a slightly too high elbow bend, a waist swivel, rather limited hips going out, but decent going forward and back, a decent thigh swivel, a weird knee bend that's a hair too low for the sake of the transformation, and a disappointing pivot. The posing here is nothing special, and a lot of the joints are quite limited, but he can at least pull off some dynamic poses. Transformation is a solid but slightly clashy affair. Maneuvering the arms around while you flip the wheels out was a pain to get used to, but there is a knack to it, and making sure you plug the cab in after the arms is important for that. But the legs flip away very satisfyingly, leaving you with a really nice little mini truck, and I really like this. Hell, I think it's probably my favourite mode. All the details on the cab face are really in depth, with the grille, bumper headlights, wing mirrors and top lights all picked out really nicely in silver paint, and that's not all. The window wipers are picked out in black, and even the tail lights get a pop of red. I love that all these details get that kind of treatment, and it really shows a level of appreciation for this mode, and the only major flaw that I can see is the fact that the hands just chill on the back there. It would definitely be nice if they could hide away a little better, but I'm not too worried about them here. And on Huffer, the black does help them blend in okay. My favourite feature of this vehicle mode is probably the weapon storage. Hell, this might actually be my favourite weapon storage for the whole War for Cybertron trilogy. The gun splits apart and connects to either side of the shield to become a proper truck bed, and this takes the truck mode from a 7 to a 10 in my books. Sure, it's not hiding the hands, the structural mold lines on the side aren't the best looking, but it's such a fun thing that you barely ever see, and it still enhances the look of the alt mode in my opinion. Overall, Huffer is a good figure. It's not a great figure by any means, not the best deluxe mini-bot out there, and it definitely isn't the best deluxe from Kingdom, but it does have its charm, and it was apparently good enough to get 3 more versions. So let's look at some retools. Kingdom Pipes was the first reuse of this figure, and it definitely wears the mold better than Huffer did. The proportions seem a lot more inspired by Pipe's animation model as previously stated, and that really shows. The broader and more heroic proportions match the design greatly and are aided by the newly retooled chest, head, forearms and crotch. There is less detail here overall, but the pops of sculpting like the chest vents and large boxy shapes feel much more at home here, and that mouth-plated head is fantastic, really helps to set this figure apart. But probably the biggest factor to do this is the backpack, which has had an extra rotation added to the transformation that causes it to sit a little more consistent concisely on the back. The colours here are also remarkably different to Huffer. The design is very monochromatic, with only a stark white and a deep navy on display. This does look really great on this mold, don't get me wrong, but I feel like it could have used a dab more paint than just the grey above his head to accentuate some of the sculpt. All of these features come together to really help Pipe stand alone as a figure of his own, and that's aided by the accessories. Pipes here comes with his pipes, shocker. They're a little hollow on the underside, but you don't really notice that until they're plugged into the wrist to complete the look, and my god do they ever complete that look. The pops of silver they add is just what the figure needed, and these do just enough to the silhouette to make this guy incredibly dynamic in comparison to Huffer, and they really aid in the posing, which, while being exactly the same as Huffer, feels a lot less clunky, whether that's thanks to the changes in the look or the much more solid joints. The transformation does remain the same as Huffer's, apart from the aforementioned swivel on the backpack, leaving you with the exact same cab as Huffer, but with some extra large smokestacks, and honestly a little bit of a downgrade on the overall level of flair. This mode doesn't look bad by any means, in fact I really like the white accents being mixed into the fray with the paintwork, but this just doesn't hit quite as hard as Huffer did. Might be the darker colours actually, or the lack of an additional truck bed. Actually, no, I think it's the absence of the additional details from the wrists in Robo mode. While those two little boxes weren't on the original design, they did do a lot to highlight the smokestacks on Huffer, and without them, Pipes feels just a little indistinct. Nonetheless, I'd still say this figure does a better job overall than Huffer did, thanks to the look of the robot mode and the overall solidity. Still though, this version feels a little basic and uninspired. But if your mindset isn't far off mine on the matter, then don't worry, there is another option for you. The Golden Disc Collection Chapter 1, Road Ranger and Puffer, was a release towards the latter portion of Kingdom that features versions of the Huffer and Pipes molds, with new visored and mouth-plated heads and sharp paint jobs that really lift the figures up. Road Ranger here wears a few shades of fluorescent orange against accents of silver and pitch black that make for an incredibly vibrant deco. The shield and gun make a return from Huffer with the silver and gunmetal placements inverted and the ability to hold them properly this time, that's a nice touch. And the truck mode is absolutely full of attitude, looking sweet in the black with the Nemesis Primey looking red windows and top lights. And Puffer sits there looking the exact opposite, with a stark white jumpsuit look accented by the silver and sky blue. This guy looks really nice with the red visor on the go, but the off-white on some of the parts was definitely an odd choice. I can definitely get behind the black cannons though, and that sky blue hits just right in the truck mode. He's so friendly looking now, it's like something that Bob the f***ing Builder, even with the double rocket boosters on the back. Wow, it's extra like Bob the Builder. Yeah, his trucks had rocket boosters, didn't they? Overall, I really enjoyed this pack, and it was a great alternative if you're not a fan of the regular release decos. But is there a best one out of all these guys? Not really, no. There's absolutely a level of personal preference in these figures. The build issues with mine prevent me from liking it as much as the others, but he's definitely not far behind, and all the others would just come down to whichever deco matches your likes and dislikes. If you can find any of these figures for a decent price, then I'd recommend them all. They're all based on a pretty good mold, but unless you're a really big fan of Hasbro's answers to the Super Mario Brothers, then they aren't going to be worth paying anything more than retail price.